Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends were the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk
You should learn something from each and every single round you play in.
to fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to the Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. We are on episode 63. That is crazy to me. This week I have my good friend Shane Yang from Live View Sports. I've been working with Shane for about, 2.5, 3 years. His story is amazing, how he came up with Live View and the whole product line they have. And I'm really excited to have him on the show because this is an item that I use with my golf bag, and I use it for my own golf training. So it's really cool how how he developed it and stuff. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Shane.
Hi, Paul. Good to be on the show.
You're all worrying me, it's all quiet. I was like, uh-oh, he's not hearing me. All right. So
it's been 63 shows, so that's a great milestone. Congratulations.
I started this last April. And it's I try to do one a week if I can. Sometimes I might go 2 weeks out or something, but just depending on scheduling.
That's
and
a
stuff.
lot, actually. That's a big commitment to do this every week. And I know because we're running our channel right now, and we're trying to do one a month. And I think we're lucky if we get 6 out a year. So
really,
it's a lot of effort to put these things.
So are you guys
together.
doing a podcast too, or are you guys just doing YouTube?
Not a
right
podcast. We're just doing YouTube, right? So we have our YouTube channel, just kind of showing off different ways to use the Live View.
Smart.
We pair up with Todd Kolb over at US Golf TV. Todd is a great coach. He works with Angela Sanford. He runs the academy up there. But yeah, so once a month they do a video on how they use the Live View in coaching and in practice. Our job is basically just to kind of help them, feed them material, and then get the YouTube videos up. But yeah, it's a lot of effort. I gotta give you props for getting these up once a week. I mean, it's a lot of work.
So when I first started, it was right in the middle of COVID. It was perfect as a Zoom call for the first year, really. But the quality of Zoom is not all the best, but at least gives you the files so that you're able to remaster them and stuff like that. But I didn't know anything. And I just a couple of my friends at different golf brands have their own podcasts. And I was really grateful to have them help me figure it out, what to buy, what platform, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot.
Right.
It's a little bit of a learning curve, but I enjoy it. And I'm really excited to have you on the show because seriously, Shane and I were talking about this before the show where how we met actually through Todd and all those guys 2.5 years ago. But to me, it's cool because I'd never really talked to Shane before. We email back and forth, but I've never talked to him. So it's kind of cool to finally talk to him. So my first question to you today is, what's your first memory in golf? How long you've been golfing, and what do you remember? What's your first memory?
So I'm kind of a late starter. And I'll tell you sort of my story. I don't know if anybody really wants to hear this, but it's probably similar to a lot of the late golfers. So I think there's two types of golfers. There's the golfer who grew up with it. Their grandfather or their father taught them, and they've had clubs ever since I can remember. So that's not me. I'm the kid who watched his friends golf. So I had uncles and cousins, and they all ran companies all the time. So they're doing all this stuff on the golf course. And so my cousins are those guys. My cousins grew up with a golf club in their hand, and my cousin Steve, he's a 3 handicap, and he hit the ball 300 yards before all the modern technology came out, right? I kind of always watched them, and that was my earliest memories. Actually, not me playing golf, it's me watching other people play golf. I always felt there was a sense of community that they had. They would go out in the golf course and they come back, and after they came back, they would always have all these stories to tell about what happened. And, they seemed so happy whenever they came back. And so when I was old enough, I finished college, and then I went to grad school. I went to law school, and in law school, I'm actually
a lawyer?
A reformed lawyer. I haven't done that for
Dude, I'm a lawyer.
20 years now. Are you really?
I'm practicing. No joke.
Right now? Nice.
Yeah, for reals.
What kind of law?
Business, IP, real estate, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
A little litigation
that's
too.
Great. I did.
We'll talk about that offline. The life of a lawyer.
Yeah. But so when I started first working, it's kind of one of those things that I really wanted to get into. I really wanted to get into golf. That was kind of the reason why, I always had this love and this obsession almost with golf, because I saw sort of how it affected the other members in my family and how they were just really, really close because of it. So then when I took it up much later. I think I was 25 or 26 when I first started playing. And I was terrible. In fact, I was terrible for most of my life. I took lessons, but really what kind of got me really interested in sort of the more technical aspects of golf was when I had kids. And my oldest daughter, who's now a junior in college, wow. She started taking golf when she was 13. So at that time, we started taking lessons. We went through a couple different coaches. I didn't really know anything about coaching, but through a number of different things, we found a coach that we really liked. The problem was the coach was all the way down in Monterey, and we're based out of San Jose, California. So that's about
a long drive. Yeah, that's a long drive.
It's an hour and a half, and for those of you who are serious, it's not something you can do like once a year. Especially with a young golfer, you're kind of trying to set their swing. So we're doing this drive probably once a week, once every other week. And it was just a lot of driving.
It's like 3 hours a week of driving.
Yeah, exactly. Three hours for, hour and a half there, and then an hour less and an hour and a half back. So it's like 5
You should have moved to Monterey.
We actually thought about that at one point.
Oh, really?
But all of our stuff is based out of San Jose. So, but it was just a really intense time for us. My daughter got good actually really fast, like a lot of kids do. She went from literally shooting in the hundreds to probably being a single digit in probably under 2 years.
That's insane.
And now she actually in 2018. When she was 17, she qualified for the U.S. Women's Am and actually made the cut. Now she's playing at UC Irvine on the women's golf team.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, so
that's really cool.
It's
and also, you're old.
Journey.
I didn't know that you were old, so that's funny.
I'm older.
So where'd you grow up? Did you grow up in California?
I grew up in Texas.
Did you really?
So I'm from Houston originally, and then I moved to California basically for work in around 98 or so.
Did you go to law school in Texas, or did you go to law school in California?
I went to law school up east. I went to law school in New York.
What school?
I went to Cornell.
Dude, you're freaking like super smart. Holy crap. Where'd you go to undergrad at? You feel like, I went to undergrad at Harvard.
No, I went to University of Texas. So I did 4 years at Texas at University of Texas.
You're making a lot of fans right now. Yeah, see? Like you went to two cool schools. So growing up though, so you grew up in Texas, right? And like your family played golf, but you didn't really play. I mean, you played a little bit, probably but not really played golf.
Right.
And then Then you went to undergrad, then you went to law school. So it's always interesting to find out like the entrepreneurs behind golf brands, because it's all over the gambit. You have guys that were in the golf world, like grew up playing golf and like were, semi-professional or whatever. And there's guys like you and me, right? Who are just like, we play. It's fun. I'm not that good. That's the part of the whole thing about golf, right? You're always trying to get better. So after you graduated law school, then you went to Texas. You went to California then after that? Because in your background, like what kind of law were you practicing?
So that's kind of how I got into the tech world in general. So I was doing kind of high corporate finance, like that type of stuff. We're doing M&A, and then towards the end of my career lasted about 5 years. As far as lawyers are concerned, it's not the longest, but it's not a short career either.
Yeah, because you learn a lot in those first 5 years, especially if you're doing high profile stuff. Like if you're boots on the ground, you learn so much that you usually get picked, like cherry picked. You know what I mean? From like a bigger corporation, or you realize like, hey, this sucks. I mean, it's one of two things.
So I was kind of in the latter camp. I was like, so my path through it was I worked in general corporate. We're doing mergers and acquisitions. And then I moved into corporate finance. And from corporate finance, I actually ended up transferring to venture finance. I was actually working with some of the funds that were funding a lot of these startup companies.
In the 90s? Like early 2000s?
This was in the late 90s, yeah.
Holy crap, 90s. That's like the heyday.
Yeah, exactly. So it was so much fun, but it was also crazy. And the one thing I learned for me, the biggest thing coming out of this all was just, I'd much rather be on the company side than on the legal side, right? Because as a lawyer, you're doing all the day-to-day, the due diligence, you're like drafting documents, you're reviewing documents, you're
worrying about everything. You're like triple, quadruple checking everything. You're managing emotions on the client side and on the other side, and you just want to get the deal done. Oh, I know, it sucks. Like it's like you're a parent, with a bunch of rich adults. That's what it is. Rich kids.
Yeah. Being sort of the adult to me, it felt like having to be the adult in the room with a bunch of kids that are having fun, right? So
yeah, it's like you're having fun, and you're not, and they're going to make making major money, right?
Like you're getting paid like so much more money than you're.
They're making so much more money. It's like, I know we got some deals going on that like at my firm, it blows my mind how much money. Like it's like more money I could ever imagine to have in my entire life, and I was just like, are you kidding me? And it's like. Then you have to manage those expectations. It's not fun.
But it's exciting, I think, in terms of things that are going on. And to me, being part of that on the legal side, I was very clear that I wanted to be on the company side. I've always kind of gravitated towards technology. I taught myself how to code when I was 16. I was never a computer science major. My major undergrad was economics and finance, and then I went to law school. I was doing corporate. I've always loved technology. I've always loved computers and programming. To the point when I was in law school, I had three roommates, and one of the biggest fights, and some of you guys probably relate to this when you're in college. Well, probably not anymore, but in college we used to have to pay the phone bill by the minute. All right, this will date me how old I am. So
we're pretty close, man.
Yeah. So we had our phone bill by the minute, and we actually had to we would allocate who had to pay how much on the phone bill because everybody's making long distance calls because we're all away at school.
Yeah, you're in law school. You're all in middle of upper New York.
Exactly. It just got to be this thing like every month, like there would be like $50 of unclaimed phone calls, and I just got so sick of it, right? Because like who's going to pay for this?
You have no money. You have like no money either. So like this, $50 is like $1 million.
It was a lot at the time. It was a lot.
You could buy a steak back then for like 10 cents. That's how much. That's how old Shane is.
Not quite that old, but yeah. So I actually wrote a program that would analyze the phone bill, and it sort like all the known calls. Like I know for sure this is you and this is you, and then it goes to the remaining calls, and then it assigned like by the time of call we kind of figure out who was home based on the schedule. So we got the discrepancies down to like less than $1. But the point was, it probably took me a week to write this program to figure out how to assign all the phone calls. But I enjoyed it. It was fun, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I like to do. So then
it's calming to you too, I bet. Like it's like when you code or when you're building something I feel like online, to me it's very calming. Like it's just like you control variables, and if it doesn't work, you can fix it right then and there. You know what I mean?
You get immediate feedback. I think that's
you're not waiting
about coding.
Yeah,
exactly. Like you can test it. You can to me debugging is actually very therapeutic because you can actually test things and you can see immediately what works and kind of go. It's a very methodical process. In the late 90s, I was really big into music, into online music. We actually I had access to MP3s before they were like a thing. Right.
Well, plus you're in California when all that was going on. Like the late 90s, like I feel like I went to college in the late 90s, right? And like, I felt like when you're in college, it doesn't matter where you were in the United States, but if you're in college, like I feel like college kids are really on the cutting edge of where technology is happening, right? Whether it be MP3s, like that was a big deal. Do we even have burners back then? I think we might start getting burners back then. Like
we had burners. Yeah, so people started burning custom CDs. So that was like the fun thing that I used to do. I basically we get these MP3s, we burn custom CDs and then send them around to all of our friends. Like
maybe make like playlists and crap like that.
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
Yeah.
So
and then,
my idea
when
was
I was in college, listen to this. My fraternity, like, I had a bunch of like CS. I went to Purdue for undergrad, and so I had a bunch of like CS majors, right? That were my frat, and so they like this is like 98, 99 something there. We built a server. Well, they didn't do it, but they built a server, and they made everybody dump all their MP3s into the server. So we had this mega, like we had our own Napster pretty much, right? It was like humongous. And then like we all had access to it, and we just like all share it or play it at parties, or burn a CD because like you had the, you could play it on your car back then. It was a big deal, like get a burn CD. So that was fun time. So I probably still have that music somewhere.
That's exactly the concept that I went off of, right? So that's exactly what's happening. People had these massive servers with all of this content. Around that same time, Napster launched, and kind of being from the legal side, my concept was like, well, I know Napster has legal problems, so is there a way to kind of do this more above board? So instead of just letting people download things, can you create custom playlists? This is something that happens like routinely nowadays, right? But back then,
Spotify, right? Same damn thing. It's like you're not. It's literally Spotify or Pandora. Exactly. Well, mostly Spotify.
So that was my first company. So we actually created one of the first streaming music companies. We raised, I think, $10 million in that first, .com bubble.
Late 90s.
And when all the lawsuits hit, unfortunately, the company didn't survive that. It was just not a good time to be in the music business. But yeah, that's how I kind of transitioned from being a lawyer into technology. So that kind of gave me...
So were you doing that on the side while you were still practicing law?
It started as a side hustle, but very quickly it just became so all-consuming that I ended up quitting my law firm job in '98, and then
badass,
did that
Shane.
full time. Yeah, well,
you're badass. You are.
It was fun. It was just so much fun at the time, right? To kind of be fully immersed, and I told you, right, that's I always knew I wanted to be on the company side. I didn't want to be on the legal side of all of it, and that was kind of my decision point.
But what's cool, my opinion, with being a lawyer, the plus side, right, is you have a legal mind, right? So you can see things a million miles ahead before it even happens, right? You can prepare for it. You can you already kind of know how to be in business, kind of, because you're helping people through their own business issues, which are major issues, And then you also at least with my practice, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and so it's cool to see, be immersed in that world. I think. I mean, I love it. That's what I love to do. So then what happened with that? Did it just go away? Did you just close it down? You're like, all right, we're out. We're not going to mess with this.
Yeah, so where that led me was it gave me basically my first software team, right? So when I first started out, I was doing everything myself. I was coding everything myself. I was setting up all the servers myself.
Which is impossible to do.
Which was, it was like a little bitty company. But then when we got funding, I think we had at one point like 50 people or something. I had 10 engineers, 10 software developers. And when everything crashed, the good thing was that we were able to actually find some really cool people. So through that, I kind of started working with my first software team. That kind of helped me transition more fully into the management side of technology. And it kind of gave me this understanding of sort of what you need to do in order to have more formal structures when you build, larger projects, enterprise software. So we ended up, we survived. We ended up just writing software code for as contractors. There was at the time, even today, there's still tons of software, right? Software kind of rules the world these days. Even though the companies went under, all those developers, most of them didn't have trouble finding jobs, and so that was us.
That's like my cousin. My cousin, he's working in the lab, like a CS lab at U of I, and his friends that he were friends with in the CS, they all the year before, they all went to San Francisco and they started a website or a service, right? And then they're like, hey, come out to California, and he's like, okay. So then he goes out to California. He works for his company. He's living in the city, in the Castro district, rent-controlled apartment, mind you, a big-ass one, in the Castro. They lived there for 15 years, right? It's they paid nothing. They paid $2,000 a month or something crazy. But then that company, this is crazy. This is the craziest story. So then that little company that him and his friends he was working at, his friends owned, they were called E-Groups, I think. They sold, Yahoo bought them out in 98. So he made a pretty sizable chunk of change, right? Not a ton of money, but for 22 years old, it's a lot of money, right? You could buy a house kind of money, like a house in California. He retired for like 6 months, and then some of his friends, same thing you were saying before, it's like community, right? Some of his friends were like, hey, we're going to this new company called Google, you should come check it out. It's like wow. 98, they're kind of getting big. Heading. So he went to Google and was at the Google for 5 years, 6 years until they went public, and he made a boatload of money, and he like retired again at like 30, and then he took like 2 years off, rode his bicycle everywhere, and like on races and stuff. And then what year was that? Like 2003 maybe. And then his friends are like, hey, we're going to this new startup called YouTube, you should check it out. And he's like, so he went to YouTube. It was only there for like 2 months, and then they got bought out by Google. So all the stock that he got from YouTube now turned into more Google stock that he already had from before. Like literally, if you stepped in shit, he would find like the biggest diamond in the world, right? Like, I mean, the best timing ever. So,
but it's kind of the nature, I think, of the Bay Area, right? And that's one of the really interesting things about being here and living here. You're immersed in so much technology. I think skill sets are important. So, I don't know if there's a theme to these podcasts in terms of, behind the brand, like how do businesses grow and how do they succeed? I think being in at the right time, at the right place, I think is a huge key factor for people to be successful, right? Yeah. And, like you said, it's like you're in the right time, right place. You can step in shit and you get a bunch of diamonds out of it. And
literally over and over and over and over again. Right?
The Bay Area has been that kind of place over the last, several decades.
30
actually.
Years. Yeah, 30 years.
But again, it's you have to have the right skill sets and the right
you got there's still a curve, right? There's not we call it a learning curve, but there's a curve you have to meet. You have to be capable of the skills that are needed in that world. If you're not, forget it. You're not, but that's also relationships and like people knowing each other and that guy does a good job. Oh, that guy does a good job. And it's more about building like the right teams and then attracting more talent, right? Like. So how long were you doing like the consulting?
So we did kind of freelance consulting for about 3 years, and we did some really cool stuff in that time. But through that, I was introduced to a buddy of mine who was actually running a venture fund, but they were based out of Taiwan. So to me, the key thing to that was Taiwan is where actually a lot of hardware is manufactured. So a lot of your PCs, a lot of your laptops. I don't know if you guys are keeping up with the news, but there's this company called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They make almost all of not all, but they make a large percentage of all the semiconductors, all the chips that we use in our iPhones and our laptops, in Wi-Fi chips, all of those things. So that's all comes out of Taiwan. So a lot of the computer hardware comes out of Taiwan. So the problem that Taiwan has is that they make stuff, but they're not really good at selling stuff, if that makes any sense. They usually partner
I think most entrepreneurs have that problem too, right? Like you can invent something, but where the rubber meets the road is can you sell that something? Even though it could be the coolest thing in the world, right? Like if no one's going to buy it, it doesn't matter.
He asked me to help them basically manage their portfolio, and their portfolio included a bunch of semiconductor things. They, really esoteric stuff like chips that protect your computer from static discharge. So if you touch your computer, sometimes you get that little spark that jumps across. That spark is like 40,000 or 50,000 volts. It can actually fry everything inside your computer. So there's actually specific chips that protect against that. But more specifically, one of the more fun projects that we did was we actually worked on a couple different camera companies. That sort of ended up becoming the genesis of what is now LiveView Sports. In that time period, we're making biometric sensors for homeland security. When you come into the country, there are like these fingerprint sensors that you use to check to see if you're really you. And so we actually made a lot of the optics in the prisons and some of the sensors for those machines. Just got really comfortable with the camera side. About 6 years ago, right about the time when my daughter started playing golf, I just kind of had one of these moments where I thought about, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want it to be? Where do I want to be 10 years from now?
How old were you when you had these thoughts, honestly?
I was probably in my
40?
late 40s at that point. I was really just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted the next 10 years of my life to look like. I kind of came back to this idea of, I still want to run my own company. I want it to be something that I'm just excited every day about, when I get up to be doing. And I want it to be something that supports my family. I literally made a list of like all these criteria of all the things that I wanted this thing to do. And then on the other side, I wrote down all of my resources in terms, these are the things that I can do. These are the things I'm good at. These are the things that, I want to support. And so, one of the things I had was I really love playing golf, even though I'm not good at it. I really want to spend more time with my family. So my daughter was spending a lot of time doing golf. And as I told you, I was spending a lot of time driving her everywhere. And then the other thing that I had as a resource was these camera companies that I was working with. And I thought, it would be really cool to create a golf camera company. And it wasn't some kind of amorphous thing. I mean, I had already kind of come to the realization at that point that there was something that we needed in order to make my daughter's practice a little bit more effective. Not a little, a lot, right? Because for a lot of golfers that take golf lessons, there is this disconnect between what happens in the lesson and then what happens when you're then on your own without your coach at the driving range, right? In the lesson, everything's perfect because your coach gets you exactly to where you need. And our coach
You're not getting the feedback too. You're not getting no feedback.
Exactly.
When you're by yourself, right? You think you're getting feedback in your head. Yeah.
It's the feedback. It's like when you're in the lesson, your coach looks at you and he tells you exactly where you need to be, and he can give you that
move
feedback.
Your foot, your angle's off, blah blah. Like
yes.
you can, and then you hit a perfect shot. And you're like, oh okay, and then you go down the range, and you're like, not even close.
Exactly. And what ends up happening is you just don't have that awareness. And so I kind of felt like this, and the way we initially handled it was just lots of videos. So I would stand behind my daughter with an iPhone, like for hours at a time, just like show her video, right? I realized that it would actually be a lot more productive. It would be something that you could see live, right? And that's how we kind of came up with the idea of digital mirroring, because the difference between like having an iPhone and then looking at it later, there's a time delay of when you see something and when you can make the correction, and even understanding what movement creates what kind of geometry, what kind of position in the backswing. And that's just kind of how I had this idea that this would be something really, really useful. And at the time, the camera companies that I was working with, there were some wireless technologies that's coming out about broadcasting video in real time. So when I saw that, I put two and two together. I thought, if I had this for my golf practice, it would be awesome, right? Because I could just see what we're doing. My daughter, I wouldn't have to constantly show her video because she could correct literally halfway in mid swing, right?
She could see it and be like, oh, all right, and then you don't need to be doing like, right. You're doing it wrong. Because kids don't listen to their parents anyway, so they're like, what? You know. You're like, look, you are doing it wrong. See. So you initially you're just using an iPhone to record, or like a camcorder, or what were you doing?
Yeah, we would just use an iPhone, and I would just stand behind her and then just record and then show her and then record and show her, right? And even with that, we wouldn't do every single swing. We'd do maybe 5 or 6 swings in a range session would be a lot. Yeah. Just because it's kind of a pain in the ass to like set up and then wait for the countdown, right? So my kids are really good at hitting on command. Right? You can tell them 3, 2, 1 hit, and they go exactly perfectly time it and then release. But yeah, it's still kind of a hassle to do all of that, and then come up and then show them, rewind, trim, and then the other thing is there are really good software tools where you can draw in lines and things like that. But how much easier is it if you can see the line literally in mid swing, right? Just in terms of just being aware of what it feels like to go up on plane as opposed to seeing it.
It's real time. It's not after the fact. And you're like, oh, let me draw the lines. It's like, well, that's not going to do me good because that was 2 days ago, right? Like,
exactly.
But in real time, like, you're like, oh, okay. And then they can it goes right back to the programming. You're getting instant feedback, right? Like, that's it. And that's how you can know if you're doing something right or wrong.
Yeah. And to me, the whole thing about getting that all started. So there's the technology piece of it, and as we started playing with it, I realized there's sort of a bunch of things that will make this more useful and more helpful. I think this is sort of where the growth of the company started. When we first launched, it was literally just a digital mirror. That was in end of 2015, early 2016. And we got really lucky because I had a relationship, an introduction to Dave Phillips, who is the founder of the Titleist Performance Institute. Oh, wow. And so he knows like a lot of the high level coaches. And the other thing is he's also worked with video his entire life, right? So through a friend, I sent him a prototype. I said, and it was all gnarly. It was like this PCB, this board with a camera stuck into like this nasty like 3D printed case. You know, it was just all kind of like glued together.
It was like an iPhone. It was like all wrapped in black tape, and you're like, here.
Yeah,
here,
basically, like imagine, you know, if somebody tried to make an iPhone. It was like, you know, maybe like pieces of wood sandwiched together.
V1.
You know, yeah, V1. That's literally what it was. So we sent it to Dave, and I said, look, this is something I'm working on. What do you think about it? Right? You know, like your feedback. Because I know you do a lot of coaching, you work with a lot of coaches. His feedback was incredible. He said, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing, because, you know, he's literally spent his entire life working with these video products. And in his world, prior to live view, the way you do video is you have, you know, all these cameras and high resolution cameras, and you have to run wiring everywhere, and then you got to power everything, and then you got these, you know, laptop PCs. This is before laptops became, you know, prevalent. So you're carrying on bricks of PCs. And then he described to me what he used to work for David Ledbetter. You know, he said Ledbetter loved video, but, you know, the problem for him was he's the one in charge of setting up the video stations. So he'd carry on like 32-inch CRT monitors. I mean, those things weighed like
super heavy. Oh, yeah, like 50 pounds. I had that. And you thought you were a badass. You're like, oh, I got a 25-inch monitor. And it literally weighed like 200 pounds. Oh, I remember that. They're like $1,000. I was mean.
Yeah, exactly. So they would set that stuff up at, you know, the driving range or in the hitting station. And you know, when we showed him sort of what we'd done, basically there's this camera and it's, you know, like this big, and then you use it with your iPhone. And it's like, that's all you need, you know. I broke my back my entire life carrying around thousands of pounds of monitors and computers and cameras, and like now you can do this with like two hands. So he was amazed. He was shocked that that was possible. And so he helped us a lot in terms of getting started. He introduced us to a lot of high level coaches.
I bet.
And that, you know, helped us get launched.
So until you did this, did you realize how small the golf community really was? Like, I didn't know, like, how everyone's connected. No. It's so weird. Like, it's cool, but I didn't know it was like that, you know?
Yeah, it's much smaller than you realized. Like you said, I think everybody kind of knows everybody. It's really interesting.
That's how I grew so quickly, was because I think maybe a generational thing, maybe, I have no idea, but like, or maybe the way I was raised, but like, if you say you're going to do something, you just do it, regardless of like, if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, just follow through, right? And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think there's two issues right now. I think people always want to get paid now, like up front for anything, right? Before they even produce anything. And then it's like, you don't build a relationship like that. I'm just buying you, right? So it's like, but I had no idea how small the community was, especially with the entrepreneur level, the ownership level, because everybody knows everybody. Like, they all do. It's crazy, which is cool because everyone shares, right? And like, hey, this guy's a good dude, you should talk to him.
Yeah.
So you V1 that he loves it. Where were you? So you started producing the actual product, right? Was that being made here, or was that being made in Taiwan? Or were you able to use how did that come about?
Yeah, so our product is made in Taiwan because, like I was describing, I have all the manufacturing relationships.
Yeah.
We're still using the original company that I had worked with, you know, for a long time. But I think the really interesting part about it was the initial launch process, because we launched on Kickstarter when we
Did you really? I didn't know that.
We did, yeah. And what ended up happening was, and this is kind of where having Dave like the product was super helpful, because we did a Kickstarter campaign, and initially there was like no response, no feedback, like nobody knew. Just because you put something up on Kickstarter doesn't mean, you know, it gets funded. I think this is one of the misconceptions that people have. or that I had, at least when I first started on Kickstarter. I thought, oh, you just like put it up on Kickstarter and like all these people are constantly looking at it, looking for cool projects to fund, right? Yeah. But reality is nobody knows. It's really hard. I think once you get out on social media, you realize how hard it is to stand out in a crowded marketplace. What ended up happening was Dave ended up tweeting about it to his followers, and all of his followers are, some of the
pros.
Leading
pros TPI people that are like in the world. Yeah.
So once he tweeted about it, it finally took off, and then we met our goal.
What was your goal?
With that,
like 10 grand?
Our goal was $20,000. It was basically just enough to fund all. We had to basically pay for tooling to, make all the plastics and things like that. And yeah.
So how did that work? So if you were a funder, or I don't know what they call those people, whatever.
What deal? I think is what they call it.
What deal do they get? Do they get like at a reduced cost? I just don't know.
They have all kinds of different things, but for us, it was basically a reduced cost. I think at the time, retail was $180, and then the funders ended up getting it for like $130, and so you save $50, but you had to wait, I think 60 days to get your stuff, right?
So
and then
cool.
So that was just a really interesting process to see how Kickstarter worked, and to figure out that you actually have to advertise on Kickstarter or on social media to drive people to your Kickstarter.
And if you're trying to do Kickstarter and you have no money, right, and that's why you're on Kickstarter, then it's like, well, how do you promote it if you have like that's the whole reason why you're on Kickstarter. So it's almost like a cycle that you can't even, unless like your situation, you had a good product, you had the backing of somebody who really appreciated what you were doing and had the following, and it wasn't like you're paying for it, right? It was more like, oh, cool, check it out, something cool's coming out finally, So what year was that? Like 16, 15? What was that?
Yeah, that was in early 2016. So that helped us get launched, and from there, then it was just kind of a series of iterations. We've been kind of iterating on the product, just trying to add features that we get based on user feedback. We added instant replay. One of the big features when we first launched, you had to like manually push a button, record, and then go back and look at it. But now we have the ability to automatically capture your swings. You just hit a ball, watch it, hit a ball, watch it, right? That was like probably the number one thing that everybody wanted to see.
And that is just a software thing, right? Just developing software to do it.
Right.
You have to physically change the product, the physical product, right? It was more of the software related side of it. It's kind of cool though to think about this, right? The way you over 20 years of your career, how you built all these like networks and relationships and being a dad, right? And trying to make your kid better, all this together to make one product, right? Like it's pretty crazy if you think about it, because if I try to make a product like what you have now, like I might have some of those abilities, but not all of them, right? And really you need to have all of them to get to like where you're at right now.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, I think, definitely, in terms of trying to take all of these resources and all of this knowledge that you've accumulated in the first half of your life and, trying to put it all together into something useful, I think, in the second half of your life. Yeah, exactly.
And it's more about what you want to do, not what you're doing, right? To like provide for your family or provide for your family, really, or like your lifestyle, but more of like, what do I want to do for the next half of my life that I've learned over the last first. It's just crazy. I love it. This is awesome. I see behind you have the live view. So can you show that closer to the camera and let's like, yep, that's like the one I have. So what are the different products? I know you have like the live view itself, and then you also have the pod. What's the pod? Because I always see that. What's the live view pod? Is that the stand?
Yeah, that's the stand. It's basically this thing right here. So the whole point of the pod is these are all basically just accessories that go with a camera. Our theory on the live view system is that we really wanted to be portable. When we first started, it was just a camera and your iPhone, and the whole point for me was always that the best tools are the ones you have with you. It doesn't matter if you've got some crazy fancy tool that's perfect for something, but if you don't have it with you, it doesn't matter, right?
And it has to work. That's the other thing too, because I have products I'm really excited about and that I have. I'm not going to name brands right now, and I paid for a subscription, and it's the biggest piece of shit, and it never works right, and it's like, and I was like, man, this thing sucks. Like, it's like I spend more time on my iPhone trying to get this damn thing to work on the course that I just give up on it. So I'm like, it doesn't, like, I'm not gonna say what product it is. You guys probably can figure it out, but like, it's very disappointing, and it's like, I don't know. You want something to work at that time because you have enough gadgets you can bring to the golf course, right? Or do a round of golf, but simplicity is key, and it has to work every time.
And so that's the key, I think, in terms of, that's where the hardware and the software comes in. But then beyond that, everything that we do is geared towards this idea that things have to be portable and they have to be sort of ready to be used. And so all of these accessories that we have, everything's designed to fold up, to be small. It's something that
you thought it through. It wasn't some like tchotchke that to add to it. It was like, there's a purpose for everything you do.
Right. You need this, right? I mean, you can use this without it, but there are enough use cases where it's just really helpful to have.
And it's not an upsell, right? It's not like, oh, you could also buy this leather pouch. It's not that at all. Yeah. It's more like, hey, we found this is cool, and it would probably make it easier for you than just putting it on a bench or on top of your bag, or clipping it or whatever. Yeah. So it's like,
yeah, exactly. The original Live View, if you remember, it actually has this clip here in the back. So if you see this channel, this was actually designed originally to work with an alignment rod. And so when we first started out, again, it's this idea of things like, what do you have in your bag so you don't have to carry extra stuff in order to use this, right? And so we thought, well, most of the golfers who are serious, who are working on stuff, I mean, you always have an alignment rod, because you want to make sure you hit in the right direction, right? Alignment is so critical to setup. And time and time again, we've seen people push their alignment rods into the ground, and we thought, that would make a perfect camera stand. So that's what this rod is in the back. But then as we kind of got into it, people are using it on concrete ranges, off of mats. So if you're on a mat, you can't push an alignment rod into the ground. It became sort of obvious that we needed something like this, and we just wanted to be really small, something that you can just put in your bag and not have to worry about, even taking it out, because it's just so small and compact.
So when somebody purchases the Live View, what do they get?
What they get is just the camera. So they just get the camera, and they get it in a nylon carrying case. Mm-hmm. So this is what you get. Again, it's got the channel at the back. So if you have an alignment rod, you can get one, at Home Depot for like $2. You don't have to buy a lot of extra stuff with it. And then the app is a free download. So you can get the app off of the iTunes store, and then there's an Android version available on Play Store. We actually are even compatible with Kindle Fire tablets. So you can actually use it with Kindle Fire.
So you can use it with OS, right? And you can use it with like Apple products, and you can use it. Can you use it with Android too?
Yeah, of course. So Android on the Google Play Store.
Okay, so then you get that, and then I know we were talking about earlier. Can you show me and like the viewers later on, like what the app looks like on the screen?
Here's what the app actually looks like. Cool. I've got my iPad set up. So remember we had the camera right here. So if you can see, actually the camera is showing exactly what the screen is showing exactly what the camera is showing. And what I've actually done is I've configured something that we call LV Sync, which is a dual configuration. So for a lot of people that are practicing, you want to be able to see two cameras at the same time. You might want to see down the line and front facing simultaneously. So we actually came up with some technology. You can use your live view camera right here together with your iPhone. So this is actually the second camera that we're using. We're using the iPhone to actually video, and everything's wireless, sending it to our iPad over here. By doing that, you can actually get the digital mirroring from two angles at the same time.
Wow.
And of course, the really cool thing is, if you were to actually take a golf swing, you can still take it and you can record it. You can actually take a swing, and then it'll automatically capture it.
Oh my God, look at
play
that.
It back for you in slow motion. Right, so that's how easy it is to use this. You just basically, take your swing, and then you can play it back, and then it goes right back to live mode.
So does it record that too? Will it save it for like the whole? So how does it save? Is it like all like a one round, not round, but like is it in a folder for like, okay, here's all the shots I took on Saturday, or how's that work?
Yeah, so if you look at this, basically, here are a bunch of swings that I have, and I use this when I practice literally all the time. You see, I have like hundreds of swings on this thing. So
and are you using your iPhone for one side and the live view for behind? But you don't have to use your iPhone. It's just kind of cool to see it from two different angles, right? Like, which is
exactly.
kind of, and I think that's one thing that really separates you from companies that are trying to mix it all together in one product. Like, we record the swing and we give you shot data or whatever it is. It's like, well, this is like more useful than having a shot from behind only.
Yeah. To me, the key thing to the live view system is the fact that you get actual video data. So to me, the shot data is the output. So when you actually go hit a golf shot, they're what I call inputs and outputs, right? The output is what happened. That is all the stuff that happens when you finish your swing. You can see how far the ball flew, what you launched at. But the thing that a lot of people get obsessed with, they get so obsessed with the output, they forget that what creates the output is correct input, right? So if you don't get your club into the right position at the top, there's almost nothing that you can do in order to generate a good angle of attack to get the ball airborne or launched or get good compression or whatever thing you're working on specifically in your game, right? So this obsessions, I feel sometimes, and again, I use launch monitors too. So I think that it's useful to help you understand the quality of what you created. But in order to create a quality shot, what a lot of people overlook is that you have to have a quality input, which is your swing, your backswing, and all of these other things. And that's where I think live view kind of plugs the gap, is just being able to understand specifically what kind of input creates what kind of output. How do you even get your hands in the right position, right? How do you get a good turn? What does it feel like when you have a good turn, right? Because a lot of people,
it's apples and oranges, right? A shot monitor from behind is going to show you, did you hit a good shot or not, and how far did it go?
Yes.
What was your low? All this crap, right? Like all the data, but it doesn't tell you like, did you have a normal good swing? Did you get lucky? Mm-hmm. What's like the stuff that really is going to make a difference? Not, oh, I hit the ball far today, so I should be able to hit the ball far every single time. You know what I mean?
Right. And as you know, I mean, there's things that we do, we compensate, and then as we start compensating, a lot of times we overcompensate, right? And that's sort of a very fine line between, hitting the ball well and then kind of just falling off the other end. How many of us have worked on something in a lesson or even figured something out, and then the next day we try to do the same thing, and it's like completely wrong, like to the point where you don't even know what happened, right? And what typically happens is you focus on one feeling and then you forget about everything else. And that's where live view is so helpful, is just to help you understand, like, you're doing this right, but just because you're doing this right, you can't forget about all these other things.
It's a multifaceted tool that like focuses on the key aspect of the swing, which most products that are coming out now are trying to do everything in one product, which is impossible, because I don't know, that's what I think. I mean, I know there's other brands that have the video capability, especially with shot monitors now, right? They have the video capability, but it's not giving you the feedback. It's just, I mean, it's like half-ass feedback. It's like, okay, yeah, that's what I look like from behind, but like, is that going to help me later on? Probably not.
The key thing, so there's like this whole science in about learning in terms of creating essentially muscle memory, right? So I've been reading a couple of really great books. There's this book called The Talent Code, where he talks about sort of what makes people really great at what they do. And one of the things he talks about is this idea of directed practice, or deep practice is what he calls it. And deep practice is a state where you're really paying attention to every movement that you're making, and you're looking for constant feedback so that you can correct. You're making micro corrections constantly, right? And you're really focused on building the correct muscle memory, the correct muscle path, the neural paths that help you then offload that. The key thing about muscle memory, so that it turns out there really is such a thing as muscle memory. It's not truly memory that resides in your muscles. It's actually memory that resides in the nerve paths that activate the muscles. But the more you train a specific movement, the more it becomes secondary, like this idea that you can do it without having to think about it, right? It becomes kind of like an autonomous system. And so what you find is, great players, they're not thinking about where they are in their backswing. They just think, make a backswing, right? They're not thinking, how high the hands are.
And then they go in the zone too, right? Like that's the zone. Like they're not even thinking. It's just automatic, like.
Right. And the reason they can do that is because they've done it so many times that they've kind of basically honed those neural pathways where it's like a needle in a groove. Once you've really dug it out deep, you just kind of set it automatically follows that path. And the problem for a lot of amateur golfers is that works great when you've worked on something and it's perfect, but it also works the opposite. If you've done something wrong your whole life, it'll automatically kind of jump back into that old groove, into that bad groove.
Well, yeah, or you're self-taught, right? Like,
yeah.
And you're okay I feel like a lot of players are self-taught, and that's why everyone's in their shoots 80s and 90s. And the reason why is because they don't have the time or the money, right, to get better. Now they want to get better, but they don't have either of those two things to use, right? So they're like, it's kind of like the drug, right? The drug is, I want to get below 80, but you'll never get it because you can't spend the time that's needed, right, one way or another, to do it. Now, like when I used to play golf, I used to be a pilot, right, before I was a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And like I used to when I was instructing and I was a younger pilot, like I'd work in the mornings, and in Arizona it gets super freaking hot, so you can't fly, right, because air density. So we go golf. It's hot, but who cares? And I was golfing like every single day, right? And I got really good, even though I was a crappy golfer. Like I wasn't professionally trained. But because I was playing every day, like you're saying, it's like when we play golf, we go, oh, I screwed that up. Why am I screwing that up? You start playing with your mental game, right? But it's like if you start doing that like every single day, you start chipping away at screwing up. You figure out what works. But like exactly what you're saying right now, it's like, if the groove is there and you're only going to the groove one time every 2 months, then it's like you'll never get it. I'm right. The first person to admit it because that's me. I'm embarrassed when I go out sometimes.
I was gonna say, so you're a pilot and a lawyer, so now I'm the one who's impressed because when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a pilot. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I did that for a while, and then went to law school. I'll tell you that story offline though, if you want to hear. It's long.
I actually do.
But I mean, what I like about, here's my opinion on Shane Yang, right? Shane Yang is a good dude. Like I said, I've worked with Shane for a while now. I think his product's cool. I actually have like their box on my shelf right here on my products that I actually like a lot.
Very cool.
I use Shane's product, and I think it's cool. Like it's simple. It doesn't like, there's a lot of noise right now in the industry, and like people just buy things because they think, oh, it's flashy or it's part of a bigger system. But like you don't really need that. Like you just need something that's gonna work, that is durable. Like if you look at the camera, that thing's like a brick, man. That's not like some flimsy iPhone, like that plastic's hard. And there's a reason why it's durable, because it's going to be knocked around in a bag, or you can put that in your bag, right? You literally could take the pod, put the pod like shaft with your shafts, and then put the live view.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
You always have it. And then it's like, I have my stuff with me. Cool.
Like you're at the range and like something goes sideways, like, God, I wish I could see what I'm doing. And it's like, no, I can't. I've got my live view in my bag and I've got the live pod to set it up and I'm ready to go.
I think it's cool. I think it's really cool.
Thank you.
So what does the live view cost now? It's like $2 something, right?
We're at $349 for the Live View Pro.
Okay.
But I think your listeners have access to a special promotion.
Oh, I just don't remember. I've been doing it forever. That's why. For real, I don't remember. I just remember, like, so if you get the Live View Pro, that's just with the Pro itself. Now, if you want to buy, is there packages, like if you wanted the pod or any extra features or what? Or is that separate order?
You would sell the pod separate. It's $49 on our website. most of the stuff you can get directly off of our website. We do sell it through Amazon, but you're basically getting the same thing from us.
Yeah, it's coming. Now, is that Amazon yours, or is that your? Is they coming from you, or is it coming through a distributor on Amazon?
Yeah, so we are actually fulfilling the Amazon request directly.
I don't know. I like it. Shane's been a friend of mine for a while. I think you guys, if you're looking for something that will actually really help you with your golf game, like the Live View, and it's reasonably priced, right? Like if you're gonna go buy a shot monitor, they're like $500. Like you can buy some cheap ass one that's kind of crappy. I'm not gonna name brands for like $250. But if you want a decent monitor, it's like a minimum $500, right? That's for like the Rapsodo or the Mevo,
right.
Or you can go with the Garmin, which is like $650, $750 right now, or you can go with the Mevo Plus, which is $2,000. So it's like you can get the the Live View for whatever $350. Say $400, right? Which with the stand, and you don't need all that other crap unless you care about how far you hit the ball. I mean, it's important to you, and whatever.
But the thing is, if you fix your swing, the ball will go, right? I mean,
exactly. It's like the chicken before the egg, right? Like, okay, I want to hit the ball far. Well, maybe you should figure out your swing, and you'll consistently hit the ball far or straight, not one of every 10, right? So, I think
that's the key takeaway.
So where can people find the Live View? What's your website?
It's liveviewsports.com.
Honestly, guys, I love it. It's great. Shane's a real deal, and if you guys want to get better, definitely check out the Live View. Well, thanks for being on the show today, and thanks for always being part of our team, brands we like to talk to and use. So,
thanks for having me.
You guys need to check out Live View, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're going to beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.